Judge Juan Merchan sentencing President-elect Trump to unconditional discharge in his New York hush money case. Trump saying the sentencing proves the case should have never been brought up, as he will receive no jail time, fine, or any other punishment. Constitutional law attorney Katie Cherkasky joins us now. Good morning to you, Katie.
Morning.
So this sentencing, which is essentially amounts to nothing, do you think it is confirmation this case should never been brought against Donald Trump?
Well, I absolutely think that that's exactly what it says. There's going to be no one else in this country that's convicted of 34 felonies and faces absolutely no punishment. But Judge Merchan's hands were essentially tied after President Trump was reelected, and then they insisted upon going to sentencing in advance of his inauguration, because once he's in the White House, there's no possibility of having any sort of conditions on his release, no probation, no ankle monitoring, nothing like that could be imposed on him while he's there. So for all practical purposes, this was the only option, and it speaks volumes about the strength or lack thereof of this case.
I think it speaks volumes about the strength or lack thereof of this case. I think there are practical issues, as you point out. I think it also is, it's hard to escape that there's images one day of Barack Obama calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy, and then at Jimmy Carter's funeral, him yucking it up with Donald Trump. The point is, all of this is theater. It's politics, in this case included, where the goal was to say convicted felon Donald Trump, nothing real when it comes to justice.
Well, absolutely. I think the ultimate goal was to keep him out of the White House, but this was the so-called consolation prize. So being able to call him a felon, it will be very short-lived. This case will be overturned on appeal. There is absolutely no doubt about it. We have to remember that this is about supposedly entering a false business entry, calling a legal expense, a payment to a lawyer, a legal expense. Still unclear how that, even on the misdemeanor side, was established at that trial, let alone all of the constitutional violations, and then, of course, the presidential immunity question. So there is absolutely no question in my mind as an appellate attorney that it will be overturned. And so this is the last-ditch effort of lawfare to have that title on him as he enters the White House.
I'm glad you brought that up. Even if the goal was to get the title convicted felon, Donald Trump has won every single one of the cases in the lawfare against him. And he will win this one, too, as you point out, on appeal. That's every expectation. Let's talk about a different case, this one at the Supreme Court of the United States. It appears, at least based upon arguments made by the justices when they heard the case over the ban on TikTok, that they will uphold that ban on TikTok.
It did appear that way based upon the justices questioning on both sides of the aisle, as it were, politically speaking. The concerns about national security versus the First Amendment concerns were kind of balanced out there. I think it's obvious that TikTok cannot continue to exist in the form that it is today in the United States, but that does not mean that there are not other options that could alleviate both of those concerns and allow it to continue for people who rely upon it and for the First Amendment purposes that it does provide to American citizens, while considering how to alleviate those national security threats, which are very real as well.
I had Kevin O'Leary, of course, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, on the Will Cain show this week. He's one of those people that hopes to buy the brand and the user base of TikTok if it's forced into a sale. By the way, let's listen in to the oral arguments and hear what some of the justices had to say about TikTok.
Congress is fine with the expression. They're not fine with a foreign adversary, as they've determined it is, gathering all this information about the 170 million people who use TikTok.
It just doesn't matter that you have creators who want to work with ByteDance, because ByteDance is a foreign corporation with no First Amendment rights.
There you have it, Katie. Does a foreign corporation have free speech, have the rights of the First Amendment?
Well, they don't. But the question here, and I think some of the justices question whether this is even a First Amendment case in the first place, or if it's about more on the national security side, preventing a foreign adversary from collecting information about Americans, aside from the fact that it is used as a form of speech. So there's a big tension there between two very big priorities, which is obviously our First Amendment rights. The court has been very protective of those over the years, but national security really has to trump that as well. So I think that President Trump makes a good point that if he were allowed to potentially see if there's a middle ground here, that it can continue to exist in some form without a full outright ban going into place, that might be in everyone's best interest, but it doesn't look like the court is going to wait for his inauguration before they make a decision here.
I'm careful with that, national security versus our rights. It's always the banner or the Trojan horse where we lose our rights. We're trading freedom for security. But I agree with you. I don't know that a foreign corporation, I do know a foreign corporation does not have the right of the First Amendment. Always great analysis, Katie. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.